truth will not be silenced, the show that allows people to be seen, to be heard, and to be human. I'm your host, Melissa Woodfork-White. In today's episode, we will talk about building trusting relationships with Derrick Dalton. Sharing our stories allows us to encourage, inspire, motivate, uplift, and help people. There will be a special surprise at the end of the show. Be sure to listen all the way through for the details. Our special guest today is none other than Derrick Dalton. He is a proud graduate of North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. No, we call it North Carolina A&T, where he received his Bachelor of Education, Master of Education from Northwest Missouri State University, specialist degree in education from the University of Virginia, and currently pursuing his doctorate at the University of West Georgia. He is a school improvement program manager, and he is the lead for several North Carolina, Nevada, South Carolina, and Georgia partner schools. Derrick is an accomplished school leader and coach with a wealth of experience in the field of education and athletics. With 20 years of expertise, he has significantly impacted student learning through his roles as a principal, head coach, and district office leader. His passion for education is evident in his dedication to creating positive and successful environments. Derrick is the business owner of Derrick Dalton Consulting, LLC, which focuses on leading athletic teams and programs to success, specializing in working with coaching staff, teams, and parents. Derrick is going to share with us about building trusting relationships. Hi, Derrick. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Melissa. Good morning, and thank you for having me. It's so exciting to be on this podcast with you. We go back a long ways, and this is going to be fun. So thank you for inviting me.
Yes, let's go ahead, and thank you, Derrick. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Tell us, what is Derrick Dalton Consulting? Tell us the story behind it, your vision, your mission, the services you provide. But before you jump into that, your expertise, which led you to starting your own business, Derrick Dalton Consulting.
Well, I saw a need. First and foremost, I saw a need floating around for 25 years in the world of education as a coach, as a principal, as an administrator at central office, doing so much. I saw a need for connection. I saw a need for relationships, and even experienced it myself as a leader, as a coach, and also as a principal. But understanding that relationships really make things go. Without the relationships and without building trusting relationships, you're not gonna achieve at your highest level. And so I transitioned that mindset from athletics to the school setting, and then I formalized it into Derrick Dalton LLC to really reach out and address those issues that I see. Lack of connection with administrators and teachers and students, schools and families, head coaches and players, assistant coaches and head coaches, and families. It's a rotating. It's just a cycle. When you have those relationships and those connections, you will be more successful at whatever you're trying to do. So I noticed a need, and I created this LLC just to address those needs.
And you know what? You are so right, because me being also an expertise in the field of education, which you have mentored me along the way, still with me. So we understand the most important thing in being able to achieve that success is building positive relationships of trust. And so with that being said, can you tell us a little bit more about your expertise? For instance, being a principal, give us some of those stories, being a district office leader, being a coach. Share some of those stories about how building those positive relationships impacts today.
Well, I can start with the negative and the learnings. My first principalship was 2003, and it was here in Georgia. That was a tough one for me because, focusing on building trusting relationships, it kind of leans back toward Dr. William Powers and perceptual control theory. So I'll link it there. Coming into my first principalship, my reference, according to perceptual control theory, was, it's the way I see the world. And
Mm-hmm.
the way I saw the world in my first principalship was the only reference that I truly accepted. Unfortunately, that means I discarded 1,000 other references in the building, including teachers and parents and students, because I wanted my reference, which was the way I saw the world, to be right. And according to William Powers, we all have references based on our life experiences. So going into my first principalship, I didn't do a very good job of connecting and building relationships. So success and productivity started to go down, and I didn't know why. But it was because I was basing my decisions, I was basing my daily work on one single reference, and that was my own. And it's a certain level of immaturity. It's a certain level of just not understanding the science of human behavior. So once I started to really and truly respond to other references, and that's not saying shifting my whole world to respond to other references, but understanding other references and meeting them halfway. Once I started to do that, and then actually listening and connecting, you begin to build trust and relationships, because that means your life experiences are just as important as my life experiences, regardless of what your title is, regardless of what my title
Mm-hmm.
is. So once we got to that point, or once I got to that point, I became a better leader. But I had to make some mistakes, and I had to really, learn the hard way, I guess you would say, before I started to be a productive leader. So unfortunately, I learned the hard way. And once I figured it out, I started to apply it in every field, whether I was coaching, whether I was a principal, or even dealing with your family and dealing with relatives. It's like you have to understand other references. The flip side is I can't assume a reference that Melissa has, or that Johnny has, or that a parent has. I can assume a reference, but I'll probably be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where this work comes into play, because if I don't understand your reference, the only way I'm going to really and truly understand your reference is by connecting with you and having conversations with you quite regularly. And that's something that I really built upon later on in my career. And I started to become more successful when I started to connect, ask questions, and just simply have conversations.
I love the fact that you touched on some key elements. One is about that communication. Two
Yes.
is not about making assumptions. And three, learning from your mistakes. And so a lot of us, it's human nature. It doesn't matter what you just said it. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, what work you're doing, building those trusting relationships is key to success in everything. And so with that being said, can you tell us, how does Derrick Dalton Consulting LLC help people to build trusting relationships? What's your process? What are your steps? Provide us with the specifics so that we know what we're getting when we come to you.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. So just with Derrick Dalton LLC. So thinking about how people are focused on their own reference.
Mm-hmm.
And that's scary, because that's what we do. We're human beings, and we naturally default to what we see and what we know as human beings. So getting others to understand, especially coaches, because athletics played such a major part in my life, right? My father was a 3-time convicted felon. Sports, athletics, football, basketball, baseball kept me in the mix as far as being a good student. I wasn't a great student. I was a solid student, but my motivation when I woke up every morning was to get to practice that evening and get to the game later on that week. With that being said, my coaches were very influential in my life. So understanding me, which is something that most of my coaches did, they understood my challenges at home, and they also understood who I was as an individual, helped me to become a major part of the team. Not necessarily a superstar. I wasn't bad, but they motivated me to be a part of the team, and also to be consistent with my behavior at school and also on the team, so I could do my part. So looking back at that, helping these coaches now is my motivation, because some coaches, they have that reference and they lock in on that reference, but they do not spend the time to connect with their players. It's awkward for them to connect and to have a conversation, and to have them to understand who you are on a personal level. Because sometimes we look at it as you're a defensive back, or you're a midfielder, you're a goalie, whatever your position is, we look at it, you're just a number sometimes. but every player is different. Every player has references. And if you want to have a successful team, you have to get to know the players on a personal level. You have to get to know them, what motivates them, what are they like, what are they not like. Some players can handle you yelling at them. Some players totally disconnect because it's almost a traumatic recall from something that may have happened in the past. You don't yell at every player, even though we did in the 70s. In the 80s, it was okay because it was the culture. But we found that that wasn't the most productive culture. So understanding different references, creating an environment and helping coaches understand adults, helping them understand how to connect with students by creating activities in which they get a chance to share, they get a chance to talk and equally share voices and provide voice for each player on the team creates that bond. Without that bond, without that opportunity to have voice, you know, we have this thing now in college football called the portal. If I don't feel attached here and I don't feel like you care about me, I'll just go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And then the portal has now kind of sort of trickled down to high school. So I focus on right now football and, you know, American football, that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so right now, just thinking about that, you know, if these kids aren't happy, if the parents aren't happy, or they don't feel like they're part of the team or part of the family, they're going to transfer. So if you create the right environment where they have the voice, you connect, you build those trusted relationships, they understand their role, they enjoy being there, they enjoy being a part of that team or that family, and they stay. So, but our coaches have to get out of this world of it's one voice, is one reference, and do it my way or the highway. We have to get out of that mode because it's real.
And I agree with you 100% because we see that also in education. And so
Yes.
the key aspect from everything you just said is giving them a voice. You give the parents a voice, you give the players a voice, all of the key players that you bring all together for that one particular player, you give them a voice because you don't want them to leave to go somewhere else. You want them to stay. And it's the same thing you would say in the classroom by being a former school administrator. Children are not just numbers.
Correct.
You have to give them a voice. That's one of the things that I learned from you. And it's something that I've done in my 17 years in the field of education, is the fact that you need to hear them and they need to be heard. And so and you already know, that's what made my classroom one of the favorites. I remember back at the mill when we had a choice between students eating in the classroom and students eating in the cafeteria because students were not consistently cleaning up the cafeteria when they were leaving. So therefore, the teachers who did not have to eat with the students before would have to eat with the students. Well, my class, I gave them a voice. I asked them, did they want to go to the cafeteria? I said, do you want to eat for a whole semester? My ELA 7th grade class ate in the classroom because they did not want to be responsible for everybody else. And then on top of that, you know, I appreciate you giving us that 30 minutes. Back in the day, it was 30 minutes free for us to sit and at least try to enjoy our lunch before jumping right back into the second half of the day. And so I was able to do that because of something that you taught and mentor on, which is building those trusting relationships. 100%. And so I would ask them every quarter, did they want to go back and eat in the cafeteria? They were like, oh no, we're just going to stay in here. We're just going to eat in here. So I would walk them for a whole semester. I walked them to the cafeteria and back, and we had a good time just bonding, what you just talked about, and eating in the classroom. And so that also transcended to the fact that when students, when you have those trusting relationships, Derrick, they will do anything for you. 100%. They want to be with you. They run for you. And so the work that you were doing back then when I first started off and the work that you're doing now, it transcends. And it's very important. It's very important. Can you tell us about some of the work that you are doing in North Carolina, Nevada, South Carolina. We've heard about Georgia because you are located in Georgia.
Correct.
So
Correct.
can you tell us about some of the work that you're doing in North Carolina, Nevada, and South Carolina?
And it's very similar. It's very similar. Remember, I wear many hats,
Mm-hmm.
and you hit a nerve right there when you said, when we give folks choice and options and they have a voice, they'll do what they're supposed to do. And it's something that I've been preaching for 20 plus years. I heard it somewhere. I didn't create it, but it's either you're going to be compliant because I'm yelling at you, I'm mad at you, I'll sit you on the bench, or I'll give you a bad grade, or we can share responsibilities, we can hold each other accountable, we can have voice, and we can be committed. Now, the difference between compliance and commitment is I don't have to sit over your shoulder. I don't have to check behind you if you're committed because we created this goal together. And that's something that I work on when I go to these schools. When I go to these schools, also when I work with these teams, it's kind of hand in hand because we want to create accountability for each other by having voice. Some of the things that I work on is I actually coach school leaders, superintendents, principals. I go in and I coach them to help them see the big picture, to get them out of the mode of my reference or this is my school. No, it's not your school. No, it's not your team. It's everyone's school and it's everyone's team. And really the most important stakeholder are the students who rarely have a voice. And then on your teams, the most important stakeholders are your players. Sometimes we think we're more important than the team or the school. So I go in to help big picture view, how to get these people aboard, how to get everyone committed. And it really comes down to sessions that allow for a sharing of conversation. Once again, we're not going to connect and build trust if we're not having conversations.
Yes.
So I set up different activities to just talk about school, about personal, about what you like to eat, what do you like to do in your free time. So I have these activities that kind of take the steam out and create a nice, comfortable environment where we get to know each other. Once we get comfortable and we let our guard down, we work really hard with the entire team or the entire staff at creating a covenant. And we try to create that covenant based on values. So we narrow it down and democratically vote to find the most valuable or the most meaningful values out of the whole room. And there's a process to that. That may take a day or more. And then we vote. And then the most valuable, the most impactful values that we believe in as individuals, we pull them together and we create 3, maybe 4 for the team or for the school. And we live off of those values for the year. It's not the teacher, it's not the head coach giving a list of values. This is what we believe in this year. It's not that, because now I'm giving you something. If I give you the rules and if I give you the values, those are my values. You don't own those values.
Right.
So we create them together and we vote on them together. The person who's the oldest in the room, the person who's the youngest in the room, both have the same amount of votes. So your voice is equal. And once we create those values or design or democratically choose those values, we break them down. What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it not look like? What does it not sound like? Because reference is still different. So we start to really dig into those values. Once we get those values in place, that's the committed conversation that we have from now on. It's not I'm going to write you up, or it's not that you're going to run wind sprints or run bleachers. It's you didn't follow our values. And when I say our, I didn't give them to you. It's the values that you agreed on. You're not being on time. You're not being professional. You're not being committed to the team because you're not following this value in the hallways. You're not following this value when we're doing conditioning. You're not showing up on time, or you're not giving me 100% effort. So it goes back to the accountability piece instead of a compliance piece. So that's what we try. That's what I try my best to allow leaders to see, that you got to let a lot go to get a bunch back. If you can let it go and stop trying to run everything and allow this voice, the accountability piece will definitely grow. And then the thing starts to carry itself. And then you'll be more successful, whether it's test scores, championships, region titles. All of this kind of comes back once you let some things go. I'm not saying wild, wild west, You still
Right.
have parameters and you still have structure and you still have your program, but you have to give up some voice to get some commitment, to get the accountability that you're looking for, to be successful and to win. Because bottom line, you want to win. You want to have the
Yes.
highest test scores. You want to have more goals. You want to have more touchdowns at the end of the day, but that comes through commitment and accountability.
Yes, and that all encompasses that building of those trusting relationships. And
100%.
yes, and so I was going to comment on the accountability piece, but you really, really explain that down to a T, is that it's not about compliance, it's about accountability. When you build those accountability principles and things together, it's not I, it's we.
100%.
And so
100%.
with that being said, Derrick, can you just give us a glimpse of what it would look like when you're working with families?
Okay.
Because you've given us the administrative view. Can you give us a little bit of perspective and also a story on how you build those trusting relationships with parents?
Powerful, powerful, often overlooked as well. Once again, our main stakeholder, I would say, would be the students and the players, the young folks. Without them, we don't have a job. Without them, we have no purpose. But usually that's our passion, dealing with the younger folks. But often overlooked are the voices of the parents. You have a few parents who make themselves known, but being purposeful and being intentional about bringing the parents in is another area that I focus on with my school leaders and also with my coaches. I look at it as a puzzle, and of that puzzle, you have the team, you have the coaches, you have the players, you have the school, and then you also have the parents. And once you get all those pieces put together, you're going to have something powerful. But once again, you have to be intentional, and you can't have that single reference, because what a school or a team looks like for a coach is going to look totally different for what that purpose in that team looks like, or the school looks like for the parent. That parent, that this may be the saving grace to have her child on that team to keep him away from gang activity. So, but you don't know that until you meet the parents. Once again, we can make assumptions about these references, but really the setup is the same. You first create an environment where they feel welcomed, and then you bring them in, and then you provide voice. You have to have conversations, and you have to have activities that help to get to know each other, to build those connecting, trusting relationships. Parents are no different. We're talking about 4 different buckets: school, parents, coaches, players, but we're talking about all human beings. We all have the same type of brain. And this is something else that I teach my leaders. We talk about the brain, we talk about the prefrontal cortex, we talk about oxytocin, we talk about cortisol, and we also talk about the amygdala. We understand that all brains pretty much work the same way. If I'm creating a trusting environment by simply connecting with you and having a conversation with you, I'm going to create oxytocin that flows into the prefrontal cortex. If I'm standoffish, or if I'm strictly criticizing and dictating towards you all the time, I'm going to create cortisol that's going to create amygdala hijack at some point in time. So dealing with the parents, same way. Most parents, not most, I can't make that statement without any data to support it, but some parents feel like they don't really have a voice, and they're kind of frowned upon at the school level because they had a bad experience as a child, or because they're struggling in life right now, and then they just don't feel like they're part of the school. Same thing for your teams. It's the coach's job, it's the coach's team. I don't really have a voice, so therefore I'm gonna keep my distance. But we have to be intentional in bringing these parents in, creating with certain activities, creating that environment where they get a chance to talk, they get a chance to share, you get a chance to build a connecting relationship with them as human beings, not as coach and as parent, but as human beings. Let's see what we have in common. Oh, you have 2 kids, I have 2 kids as well. I'm a coach, that's my title. I'm a principal, that's my title. But at the end of the day, I'm a dad. I'm a mother. I'm a mother. So we have more things in common than we have different. We just don't talk because of that wall that's created. Once we start talking and build connected relationships, you kind of sort of go back into the same mode for the parents, because this is a different set of stakeholders, but they can go in and also create their covenant with what values are important to the parents, and what is your role on this team? Is your role to do dinner, pregame dinners? Is your role to raise money? Is your role to do A, B, and C? Because if you don't have a defined role, my role is going to be to bash the coach because they lost, or to bash the coach because my son didn't get to play. So it all kind of comes back. If you have a defined role, you understand what we're trying to do. You understand what we're trying to accomplish. You understand that we're trying to build young men or build young ladies to be successful citizens. So having the parents come in, we start to understand, okay, what do they really want out of this program? Some parents just want their kids to be there and be a part of. That's enough. Some parents want an NFL contract or a Premier League contract. So we have different roles. So I have to get to understand, directly what you expect out of this program. And then I can tell you what I'm going to give this program or what I'm going to give your child to the best of my ability. So once again, it comes back to references. Your references are going to be different. We have to have conversations. We have to create values for that particular stakeholder group. And then we have to live by those values.
Everything that you've talked about and shared with us today, it all brings us right back to building those positive, those supportive, those trusting relationships, communication, accountability. Everybody is a player. Everybody has a role. That was one of the key things that you've said throughout our conversation, is that everybody has a key role. Everybody has a stake, and they don't know that until you give them that voice. They don't know that till you take the time out to get to know them, their story, their background, and why they're doing what they're doing, and how you all can do it together as a team.
Yeah.
And so once again, I have to say, Derrick, that everything that you've shared with us today, it resonates in all fields. It's not just education. It's not just sports. It's not just building trust and relationships is key to anything. And that's how you also keep people to make that success. So with that being said, how does sharing your story today help others? Tell us about, you've already shared with us all the wonderful work that you're doing. Tell us about any future plans that you have for the work that any future plans because I know you're also working on your doctorate.
Yeah, almost done with that. I have a couple more chapters. Hopefully by the summer, I'll be finished with my doctorate in school improvement. So, just trying to get the word out there that I'm available. I'm ready to launch here very soon. I'm already working with a couple of different athletic teams. I'm still traveling around the country working with these schools, but understanding the importance of athletics to our society. I think we often, we see the professionals on television, and, with our society, athletics are very important. If you can get the right environment surrounding athletics, you have an opportunity to impact some lives. Not everyone's going to the Premier League. Not everyone's going to the NBA. But, if you're a coach and you're able to connect and build those trusting relationships and those puzzles, and that puzzle that I was telling you about with the school, with the student, with the parents, with the coaches, you're going to create some really positive citizens. And they need this positive team, to help them, to prepare them for life. And I'm an example of what happened, of how it can work. So I want to get it out there. I want to help these coaches because sometimes they just don't know what they don't know, but the portal's blowing up. I want to get on that college level and help these teams connect and build these trusting relationships so these kids will stay put, get their degree, move on with their lives. And if we're fortunate enough and talented enough, we can go to the next level. So I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
Well, guess what? You already have gotten the word out by being on our podcast, and we so much appreciate that. Thank you so much, Derrick. You know that I'm also a product of the work that you do by being my former principal and mentor, because of the importance of building those trust and relationships and understanding those views other than your own, and also, the communication, accountability, and building those partnerships. Everybody has a key role, a key player, and a key role. So thank you so much, Derrick, for joining us today. It was great having you. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. So next week, we'll continue to discuss and have conversations about real experiences, personal and professional, stories that need to be shared, seen, and heard that makes us human. The truth will not be silenced, to be seen, to be heard, and to be human. The surprise, if you like or leave a positive comment about our show, you will get a shout out that includes businesses, products, services, organizations, and events. Following the link in the show notes lets Buzzsprout know we sent you and help support our show. Buzzsprout is the best way to launch a professional podcast. Want to ask a question, be a guest, or subscribe to this podcast? The truth will not be silenced. Click on the show link. Thank you for joining us.